Hi, I'm Aaron Higgins. This is my first time here, so please be nice. Also, please feel free to ask lots of questions because that helps me know where I should be going. So I run a small company and we make weird screen musical instrument thingies like you see here in front of you. How many people know what modular synthesis is? All right, about half of you. For those who don't, it's something that became popular in the 70s really. Moog did a lot of this stuff, and it's sort of hit a resurgence recently for a few different reasons. One, it's retro. Two, it's kind of about the process and not about the results. I mean, with all this stuff in technology and computers, it's kind of gone super deep and super complicated, and it's hard to sort of get any satisfaction when you're trying to produce music or trying to do your own thing. So people have gone the opposite direction, and like vinyl and cassettes coming back, analog synthesis is a similar retro kind of thing where you're having to become very in tune with what's happening with the music. You know, I connect the most basic possible thing. This thing produces a tone all the time, and then you need to connect to something else that will make it only produce tone some of the time. Then you produce it to something that's going to shape that tone, and so on and so on. That's been popular in this sort of smaller form factor called Eurorack for about 10 plus years. I'm coming from the software world, so I wanted to do something that was a little bit different and sort of steal all the best ideas from plugins and from iOS apps and repackage them into these weird touchscreen module things. You'll notice that there's a lot of crazy wires, and just like many of the DIY projects that each of us do, creating the instrument, selecting the gear in the first place, and then hooking it up and creating sounds is largely about the process and not about the result. Some of the most treasured analog gear has no presets, so it's like you hook it up, there it is, and you disconnect it and it's gone. And that's kind of a blessing and a curse. It makes it so that you have to sort of live in the moment, which is a good thing in today's day and age. But in some regards, that's nuts. Like so many things, like you have to be a little nuts to do this. People spend a stupid amount of money on this kind of thing. For me, the process was trying to figure out how to get a reasonably capable microcontroller into these boxes. I like to refer to it as like, this is the same power you had on your desktop 20 years ago, the same power you had on your phone about 10 years ago, and is now based in a 32-bit ARM microcontroller. Those of you familiar with the STM32F7 series, you can do quite a bit of DSP and drive a screen. A big question in developing something like this is whether or not to use Linux and whether or not to do sort of down to the bare metal. I chose the bare metal approach because Linux is interesting and does a lot of things, a lot of people like it. But the biggest drawback for real-time applications like this is latency. That it's just anytime you bring in a huge chunk of third-party code and ask it to do something that it's not intended to do, like behave really real-time, you're kind of asking for trouble. Some people did go that route, and there's plenty of examples of things that do it right, and successfully pull that off. I chose the harder way, but lighter weight. It's more control over what you do. In terms of the products themselves, I don't have time to cover it all, but I can tell you it's everything from producing sounds like this thing. It's this synthesizer here on the upper right has hundreds of megabytes of samples, or sort of wavetables they're called, like big chunky waveforms that are being manipulated in real time, and you hook up stupid little MIDI controllers like this to it. MIDI is kind of a funny thing. Everybody's familiar with MIDI, or should I define that? All right, it's a digital protocol for those who aren't. You can now use USB for that purpose, and that's a handy way to hook up a $60 controller up to your weird and crazy creation. So that's a synthesizer. You can get in and do things like edit the parameters, like, I'm gonna put some effects on just to be, those are things like that are kind of at your disposal. There's way more stuff, way more tweaky parameter to it than that. And the funniest thing about being in this marketplace is the feature requests you get back. It seems like every person wants a different knob. They want to control some other little thing. They want to go deeper. They want to do more. So that's the synthesizer. This one is a sampler. You can play anything from single, short sounds to full-blown things. A screen like this does get you the ability to go in. It's a little hard to see for some of you, but you're dealing with waveform type things, which is kind of unusual in this form factor, but it's something you've seen on computers for 20 years now. So everything old is new again. It's about repackaging it and making it for a different audience. This one up here is a sequencer. This is kind of where the notes live and where you might play something in and then manipulate it and overlay it with some other things. You can see that there's actually little teeny tiny dots there that represent notes, and you can manipulate them with the on-screen controls. In terms of like the discovery of all of this, it was eye-opening to see like how much people want to interconnect things and how they want to shape it and make it their own. Like I was surprised to learn that people want to load in samples and then they want to run them forwards and backwards. They want to change the pitch. They want to stack them up. They want to distort them. There's just like no limit to what people want to do and how many different avenues they want to take. How am I doing on time?
You're good, fine.
Okay.
Make more sounds.
Make more sounds. All right, thank you. So let me play you a brief demo of demonstrating these two things. I've got please ignore my awesome speaker. Yes. All right, that's. I guess I will have to address that other ways. That's not how it's supposed to sound. Maybe it's still a delay.
Does it have an out?
Yeah, try it in the speaker. We can try this one a bit at the same now. See if it sounds any better.
It's this thing here. Yeah, that's not connected still. All right. Play some more sounds. So once you get this going, go ahead.
Are you using libraries to create the visual representation?
No, that's largely from scratch. It seemed like a smarter way to go for a sort of lightweight thing that could. That's not what I'm doing. It's cool sounding, but that's not me. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, and Aaron invented Bluetooth.
Yeah.
You tried to turn off the
I feel like it would override the. Then again, I don't know.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have to do this later.
What do you call this?
So the company name is 1010 Music. It's meant to be a hybrid name of like a weird numerical digital thing. 1010 Music, which is spelled 1010 Music. We have a series of things called, this is the bit box, this is the synth box, this is the effects box. Okay. Let me set that up a little bit. So here you've got a variety of different instruments that you can mute and unmute. I'm going to start by just playing some simple drum sounds. So that's the snare sound. And each of these wires carries like, the hit the drum sound now kind of thing. So you're really down to the very most basic interconnections. Like I can, I don't want to use that sound, I want to use a different sound. And it kind of gets you a more real world, or more tangible, I'm connecting the kick sound to some other thing, or I'm moving it around, or I'm manipulating it. It feels like you're working a little harder and kind of you earned it, as opposed to just like punching up a preset on a computer.
Is it MIDI or audio going on the wires or something else?
Gate signals, so sort of CV, sort of basic electrical signals, that's like a plus 5 TTL pulse.
Okay.
In other cases, we are using MIDI. We are using just a very basic 35-year-old digital protocol to connect between modules.
For the TTL logic, how does one box know what one means? Is it one or is it serial data?
I guess it's just one cable has the trigger signal for the kick drum, so it's very, very basic. And that's kind of the rudiment of analog synthesis, is that this one is going to control the level of the filter. This one is going to fire off the envelope. This one is, and it may seem like stupidly rudimentary, and it is, but that's kind of the beauty in that that you're connecting A to B and you're going to get a direct result. In many cases, it is variable voltage. It also can go from like -5 to +5, and in perfect kind of anarchistic fashion, it can go anywhere from like -12 to +12 or plus or -5. There's like too many standards, and sometimes things break and don't work properly, but that's part of the fun, I guess. Let me play a little more full orchestration and then choose a different preset. So that illustrates that you've got 4 different drum sounds going, you've got some loops being triggered. I'm not taking advantage of several other things which are here. I used to sort of round that up and wrap things up. Modular synthesis can do so many things. You can get into the lighting domain. I was recently at a conference that was dealing with lasers, and in fact, this setup here, if I had a laser with me, could generate some animations and let you control over time. Like I want the beat to synchronize with the opening of a shutter or the stretching of an animation or the change of colors. It really is about like taking creating your own special thing in a variety of ways, and not relying as little as possible on presets, because they can be a crutch. They're a great way to save things, but you're building on top of other people. Any questions?
What does it have in the way of analog to digital?
Talk to the fish.
What does it have in the way of analog to digital? So like if you have a whole Euro rack setup that has a whole bunch of analog modules, and you want to like control a laser with that or get MIDI out of it, is that something that you can do with your system?
I mean, the ecosystem definitely does that. I mean, the ecosystem is oddly a strange mix of digital and analog. Like I'd say roughly 50% of the modules you buy are actually digital behind the scenes, but have analog ins and outs, and you wouldn't know they're digital. Lasers can be controlled with analog. There's a standard that's a 25-pin D connector that's plus or minus 12 volts. I'm sorry, 10 volts that you can convert back and forth between. Yeah, there's a variety of ways to go. There's a project we worked on recently that takes a teensy and lets you do wacky, do-it-yourself code and interface with other things. It is, yeah, very much a do-it-yourself world.
Hello.
Hello.
You said you were making these for clients. You had said, oh, people are asking for this and that. Are you
No.
building these custom for people, or is this your own?
It's my own business. It's on the open market. It's not for clients, but it's a pretty niche-y space. So we get a lot of direct personal feedback.
What's inside?
If you were to flip one of these over, you would see a single PCB with a lot of fairly dense surface mount components, but it's like a 32-bit microcontroller, 64 megabytes of RAM. Stuff's running off a micro SD card. That's where all the samples are. But those are so big nowadays. Like even a 4 gigabyte card gives you like more sounds than you can reasonably use in a setting. Just a ton of I/O. There's a Cirrus Semiconductor codec, like something you might find in an AV receiver, like a stereo in or 6 or 8 output thing. But it's a lot of glue. The screen, the modern microcontrollers will connect directly to the screen, which is kind of handy. But yeah, I mean, like the core heart of it, that's the processor, RAM, and the DAC is just a small percentage. How do you load sounds? On the micro SD card is the easiest way to do it. Take that over to your computer, put a WAV file on it, bring it back.
Cool.
Any other questions?